A grand suite deck is not just an accommodation area. It is a bubble of privilege. But what happens when that bubble is burst by pure, unfiltered hatred? On the transatlantic voyage of the Royal Sovereign ship belonging to Majestic Horizon Lines, a young black woman wearing a simple bright blue hoodie became the target of a senior head steward's rage. The head steward, Susan Whitmore, did not just deny her service. She screamed at her, mocked her, and tried to have her arrested when the ship docked. She thought she was putting a nobody in her place. However, she did not realize that the quiet girl sitting in cabana number 2 in the private lounge was Elena Ross, and that her single text message was about to bring the entire cruise line to its knees. The exclusive suite lounge on the Miami to Southampton voyage of the Royal Sovereign was a carefully curated symphony of beige leather seats, brushed aluminum details, and the expensive, hushed scent of warm towels. Passengers were settling into their cabanas, and the space breathed an air of quiet importance. They were bankers, producers, and heirs to old money, all performing the practiced ritual of avoiding eye contact while simultaneously assessing one another. Into this sterile environment walked Elena Ross. She was 22, but a deceptive bright blue hoodie emblazoned with the logo of a small, obscure tech startup made her look like a teenager. She wore no makeup, and her natural hair was pulled back in a simple, elegant tie. A pair of high-end Bose headphones rested around her neck, and in her hand she carried not a designer handbag, but a worn copy of a dense textbook on maritime materials. She found her windowside cabana number 2 in the private lounge, slid into it, and immediately became engrossed in her book. Her entire posture was one of quiet, unobtrusive study. This situation was an offense to senior head steward Susan Whitmore. In her late 40s, with a helmet of blonde hair and a smile as brittle as spun sugar, Susan ruled the exclusive suite deck with an iron fist. She had been at sea for over 2 decades, and in her own mind, she was not a server. She was a gatekeeper. She prided herself on knowing people. Mr. Kensington in cabana number 1, with his loud Patek Philippe watch and booming voice. He was important. The woman at table 3C with her obvious plastic surgery and lapdog. She was wealthy. But the girl in cabana number 2, Susan's eyes narrowed professionally and scanned Elena. Definitely a non-revenue passenger, she thought, her lip curling slightly. A low-priority employee or relative traveling for free. Or worse, one of those new money influencers who uses their parents' loyalty points and does not know how to behave. She was a disruption to the ambiance Susan had worked so hard to cultivate. Pre-departure beverage, Susan asked, her voice like a warm flute for Mr. Kensington. Champagne or a mimosa? Make it a double, Susan. Mr. Kensington winked. It is going to be a long voyage. Susan giggled, the sound like tiny bells. Right away, Mr. Kensington. She moved down the aisle with her smile fixed and served the other passengers. When she reached cabana number 2, the smile did not just fade. It was vacuumed away, replaced by a look of profound impatience. Elena looked up from her book. Just sparkling water with a slice of lime, please. Susan's nostrils flared. There was no please. There was no acknowledgement of her station. We are in the middle of boarding procedures and luggage loading right now, she snapped, her voice low but sharp. I will attend to you when I am available. Lena blinked, slightly taken aback by the venom. Oh, okay. No problem. Assuming the attendant was just stressed, she returned to her book. However, Susan felt a wave of victory. She had established the hierarchy. She walked back to the service area, the kitchen, deliberately not bringing the water. She would make the girl wait. She began her preparation checks, chatting loudly with her young team, Jessica and David. Did you see the one in cabana number 2? Susan muttered loud enough for them to hear. She thinks that just because she is on this deck, she can snap her fingers. I swear they let anyone in the front these days. Young and eager to please. Jessica giggled nervously. I saw her. She looks like she got lost on her way to the standard staterooms. David, who was busy counting mini bottles, just shrugged. His silence was a form of agreement. He knew Susan's moods. His job would be easier if he just stayed out of her way and let Susan deal with the victim. She had chosen for that voyage. The ship departed from the port. The safety drill was completed. Feeling thirsty, Elena waited patiently. As the ship headed towards the open ocean, she settled in. She would have long meetings with her father in the conference room on the ship tomorrow, and she just wanted to read. An hour after the voyage began, Susan started the meal service. She laid out the starched white linen cloths and polished cutlery with a theatrical flair. "Mr. Kensington," she cooed, "your lobster thermidor. And another champagne. You are reading my mind, Susan." She served every other passenger, her voice a syrupy melody of accommodation. Finally, she arrived at Elena's cabana. She did not have a tray. "We are out of the sea bass you pre-ordered," she stated flatly. There was no apology in her tone. "We only have the chicken dish left." Elena looked up, marking her page. "Oh, that is not a problem. But are you sure? I did confirm the pre-order this morning." Susan's eyes went cold. To be ignored was one thing. To be questioned was another. "I just told you the manifest was wrong. We are out. Do you want the chicken or do you not?" Passengers nearby, including Mr. Kensington, were listening now. The quiet, polite girl was being difficult. "The chicken is fine. Thank you," Elena said, her voice remaining level. "And may I still request that sparkling water I asked for before we left the port?" This was the breaking point for Susan. The girl's calmness, a refusal to be intimidated, her persistent and quiet dignity. It felt like an attack on Susan's authority. She felt a hot, dark flush crawl up her neck. "You know," Susan said, leaning in, her voice a venomous whisper, "I have been doing this job for 22 years. I know your type. You come in here thinking you own the place, making demands you have no right to make. You should just be grateful you are even sitting here." Elena's head snapped up quickly. The book was forgotten. My type. I am a paying passenger sitting in a ticketed seat. I asked for water and the meal I ordered. Exactly what type am I? Susan saw her opportunity. The girl had raised her voice. Now she was a disturbance. "Do not raise your voice to me," Susan hissed. "I do not know who you think you are, but you will show me respect." "I am showing you respect," Elena said, her voice now dangerously calm. "I am asking you to do the same. You are being unprofessional and hostile." That was it. The word hostile. Susan reared back, her face a mask of theatrical shock. "Hostile? Hostile, huh? I will show you what hostile is." And then she screamed. It was not a shout. It was a full-throated scream that silenced the entire lounge. "How dare you? Who do you think you are, talking to me like that? I am sick of people like you. I am sick of your attitude, your disrespect. I am in charge of this lounge, and you will be quiet." The ship lounge went utterly, deathly silent. Every head had turned to them. Elena just stared, her face pale with shock, her hands gripping the armrests. Mr. Kensington was smirking, clearly entertained. Susan was breathing heavily, her chest puffed out, her eyes wild. She had one. The invisible passenger was now the pariah of the lounge. The echo of Susan's scream hung in the recycled air. It was a sound so unprofessional, so jagged, that even the hum of the ship's engines seemed to recoil from it. Elena sat frozen, not out of fear, but out of a profound, chilling disbelief. She had been on hundreds of trips with her father, many on their own yachts or jets. But she had specifically chosen this commercial cruise to meet a friend in Southampton before meetings. To maintain some semblance of a normal life? This was anything but normal. High on her own adrenaline, Susan misinterpreted Elena's silence as submission. She leaned in again, her voice dropping to a theatrical, condescending stage whisper for the benefit of the surrounding passengers. "Now," she whispered, "are you going to be a good girl and be quiet for the rest of the voyage? Or am I going to have a talk with the captain?" Elena finally found her voice. It was low and trembled, not with fear, but with a controlled, icy rage. "You screamed at me in a full lounge because I asked for a glass of water." I screamed because you were abusive. Susan shot back, her voice rising again. You were aggressive. I felt threatened. Threatened. Elena's voice was barely audible, yet it cut through the lounge. I am sitting in my seat reading a book. You are the one standing, yelling, and causing a scene. You are the one who is threatening me. This was a narrative Susan could not allow. She immediately turned to the lounge, playing the victim. You all saw it. She was causing trouble, demanding things we did not have, and when I tried to calm her down, she became aggressive. Mr. Kensington in cabana number 1 seized his moment. She is absolutely right, he boomed, his voice full of self-importance. I heard everything. The girl has been trouble since the moment she boarded. She probably snuck in here. You should check her ticket, Susan. Susan shot him a grateful, conspiratorial smile. Thank you, sir. I am just trying to maintain a safe and comfortable environment for everyone. Elena looked from Susan's triumphant face to Mr. Kensington's smug sneer. Then she looked at the other passengers. It was a mix of embarrassed, annoyed, and indifferent. A woman at table 3C was filming the interaction on her phone. There was a small, satisfied smile on her face. No one was defending her. No one was intervening. Elena's gaze shifted to the other 2 ship crew members, Jessica and David, who were standing at the edge of the service area with their faces carefully expressionless. They had seen everything. They knew Suzanne was lying. Elena locked eyes with Jessica. You, Elena said, her voice clear and carrying. You were right there. You know, I did not raise my voice. You know, I did not threaten anyone. Say something. Jessica flinched as if slapped. She looked at Elena, then at Susan, who was glaring at her. There was a clear, just stare expression in Susan's eyes. Jessica's first loyalty was to her career, and Suzanne was the senior officer who wrote her performance reviews. She broke eye contact with Elena and began rearranging coffee cups with sudden, intense focus. I was in the kitchen, Jessica stammered, looking at no one. I did not really see. I just heard the shouting, David. Elena tried. David just shook his head, raising his hands. Do not involve me. I am handling service in the back. He turned and disappeared behind the curtain toward the standard stateroom section. They were complicit, the entire team. Through action or inaction, they had all signed on to Susan's lie. That is enough, Susan declared, her voice ringing with finality. You are a non-compliant passenger. You have created a hostile environment. I am officially banning you from service. Not that you are going to get anything anyway. And I am informing the captain. Informing the captain about what? Elena asked, her voice hardening. About your own fabrication. About the assault you just committed. Assault. Susan shrieked, clutching her pearls. Now she is accusing me of assault. This is unbelievable. You should be grateful I do not have you in handcuffs right now. She should be, Mr. Kensington chimed in. She seems unstable. For all we know, she could be a security risk. The atmosphere in the lounge shifted instantly. The word security was a trigger. Embarrassed passengers now looked alarmed. The woman filming held her phone more openly. Elena was no longer just a nuisance. She was a threat. Feeling that the lounge was completely on her side, Susan walked to the main reception desk and deliberately, dramatically picked up the bridge intercom phone. She pressed the button, her back to Elena, but her voice was loud enough to be heard. Captain Anderson, this is Susan from the front. I am sorry to disturb you, but there is a situation in the exclusive suite section. A passenger in cabana number 2. Yes, her. She has become extremely unruly and argumentative. She was aggressive. Yes, I did. She is accusing the crew, ... Yes. I am afraid she is a potential security risk. My recommendation is that port police and the Coast Guard meet us at the arrival port on the pier. I do not feel safe with her. There was a pause. Elena could hear the faint metallic crackle of the captain's voice on the other end. Thank you, Captain, Susan said, her voice dripping with false gratitude. She hung up the phone and turned to Elena, her face a mask of cold professional triumph. "The captain has been informed," she announced to the lounge. He agreed. "Security forces will meet Miss Ross upon our arrival in Southampton. Until then, I request that everyone please remain calm and return to their entertainment." She looked directly at Elena. "If you move from that seat or say one more word, the captain has authorized the crew to use restraints. You understand me?" Elena Ross looked at the woman who had just lied to the captain of a commercial ship. She looked at the smirking passenger who had encouraged her. She looked at the complicit crew and the frightened passengers. She was alone. She had been tried and convicted in a kangaroo court set up in the middle of the ocean. Elena said nothing. She simply turned her body away from Susan, away from the lounge, and looked out the window at the endless, indifferent blue ocean. Susan smiled. She returned to the kitchen where Jessica and David were waiting. "Did you see?" Susan whispered, dizzy with power. "That is how you deal with trash. She will be in a holding cell before we even get our suitcases. She deserved it." Jessica and David murmured in approval, their relief palpable. The crisis was over. Susan was happy. Their jobs were safe. They had no idea what was coming. For the next 2 hours, Elena Ross was a ghost in Cabana number 2. She did not read her book. She did not watch a movie. She just stared out the window, her mind a cold, precise engine. The humiliation was a physical thing, a hot knot in her stomach. But beneath it, a different feeling was hardening. Not just anger, but a deep, weary determination. She had given them every chance. She had been polite. She had been quiet. She had appealed to her colleagues. She had tried to de-escalate the tension. And in return, they had lied. They had collaborated and threatened to have her arrested. The system had failed. Susan's lies were now an official report entered into the captain's logbook. When they arrived at the port, the word of a young black woman in a hoodie would be against a loyal, 20-year veteran head steward, a complicit crew, and a lounge full of witnesses like Mr. Kensington. She knew exactly what would happen. She would be detained, interrogated. Her father would be called. The situation would be cleared up with apologies full of shame. But Susan would face no consequences. At worst, she would receive a warning. And then she would go back to ruling her kingdom with her prejudices confirmed. Elena was not going to let that happen. Meanwhile, Susan was enjoying herself. She was paying extra attention to Mr. Kensington, refilling his glass every 10 minutes. "We cannot thank you enough for your support, sir," she said loud enough for Elena to hear. "It is so rare to have passengers who understand what we go through." "Happy to help, Suzanne. We must unite against that element," he replied, gesturing vaguely at Elena. Elena ignored them. She took her laptop out of her bag and placed it on the table. She did not turn on the computer. She reached into the side pocket and pulled out her smartphone. Susan was on top of her in a second. "What do you think you were doing?" "It is against maritime regulations." "This ship is equipped with satellite Wi-Fi," Elena said, not looking at her. "I am connecting to the Wi-Fi. This is completely legal and in accordance with your own policies. I do not care. I told you not to move. You will do nothing until we reach the port." Elena finally turned her head and looked at Susan. The look in her eyes was no longer shock. It was something else. It was pity. "You already lied to the captain and fabricated a security threat?" Elena said, her voice soft. "Are you really going to try to escalate this further? Go back to the kitchen, Susan. You are done." "Am I done?" "I am done." Susan was sputtering. "You are the one who is done. Give me that phone. You are probably trying to arrange something." She lunged for the phone. This was a catastrophic, career-ending mistake. Elena pulled the phone back with sharp reflexes. "Do not ever touch me." Assault. "She is attacking me." Susan shrieked, stumbling back. "David, Jessica, help. She is attacking me. She is out of control." This was the final nail. Elena had been recording audio on her phone since the first scream. Now she had proof of a second, entirely fabricated assault. But she was not going to use the recording. Not yet. As David and Jessica rushed forward in terror, Elena simply raised one hand. "Stay back," she commanded. And there was so much sudden authority in her voice that they both froze where they stood. She unlocked her phone. She ignored the babbling, hysterical Susan. She ignored the gasping passengers. She opened her messaging app and typed a single short text to a contact saved only as Marcus B. The message was simple. Royal Sovereign Voyage, exclusive suite section. Senior Head Steward Whitmore. I have been subjected to racial profiling, screamed at, and publicly threatened. She just fabricated a security threat to the captain and falsely accused me of assault. Please handle this before we reach the port. This is not a request. She pressed send. The delivered notification appeared. Seeing that Elena was texting, Susan felt her rage peak. Give me that. You are texting your friends trying to organize a protest on the pier. I knew it, Captain. She is a threat. She picked up the reception phone again. Captain Anderson, she, ... Before she could finish, a different sound echoed in the lounge. This was not the intercom. It was the shrill sound of the satellite phone on the bridge. The satellite phone is only for emergencies. Priority communications from the company operations center or calls from God. In the kitchen. Susan froze, the intercom still in her hand. The ringing stopped. Silence. 1 minute passed. 2, the tension was so intense it was suffocating. Then the door to the private lounge opened. It was not the first officer who entered. It was Captain Anderson himself. His hat was slightly askew, and his calm, unseen face was now as white as a sheet. He looked as if he had just been told the engines were on fire. He walked straight in, his eyes scanning the lounge. He passed the kitchen, completely ignoring Susan, who stood there with her mouth open and the phone in her hand. He passed by Mr. Kensington. He stopped directly in front of cabana number 2. Elena Ross looked at him. She was no longer recording. She was just waiting. Captain Anderson swallowed. His hands were visibly shaking. Miss Ross, he stammered, his voice cracking. Susan's blood ran cold. Ross, in a move that stunned the entire lounge. Faye? The captain took off his hat and held it in his hands as if he were in the presence of royalty. Miss Elena Ross, he asked, his voice now a whisper full of terror. Elena slowly nodded. Yes. Captain Anderson closed his eyes for a second as if taking a physical blow. Ma'am, on behalf of Majestic Horizon Lines and my entire crew, I need to offer my most sincere, deepest apologies for this catastrophic failure of service you have experienced. Susan made a small, strangled sound. What was happening? You were misinformed, Captain, Elena said quietly. I was, he said, his voice trembling with anger, directed not at Elena, but at himself. I was gravely misinformed. I was lied to by my crew. He shot a look back at Susan, filled with such pure, unadulterated hatred that Susan involuntarily took a step back. Miss Ross, he continued. Turning to Elena, we just received a priority 1 call via satellite from Mr. Marcus Blackwood. Susan's knees gave way. She held onto the counter to support herself. Marcus Blackwood, the CEO of Majestic Horizon Lines, the owner of the cruise line, the man whose name was only spoken in whispers and with fear. He told us who you are, the captain whispered. He said you are the daughter of Robert Ross, the owner of Ross Logistics. Mr. Kensington, listening to the event with smug surprise, suddenly choked on his champagne. Ross Logistics, the trillion-dollar shipping and logistics empire, the cruise line's largest corporate client, the company responsible for billions of dollars in cargo and corporate travel contracts. The captain was not finished. Mr. Blackwood also explained that Ross Logistics is not just our biggest client, are they, ma'am? They are the holding company's new majority shareholder, the company that bought the cruise line last quarter. The silence in the lounge was no longer silence. It was a vacuum. The girl in the hoodie, the security threat, the charity case Elena Ross. was not just the daughter of a VIP, she was effectively the owner's daughter. Uncle Marcus tends to get involved when he hears that his friends' children are being threatened by his employees, Elena said, her voice still calm. I just texted him. Captain Anderson looked like he was going to be physically ill. He ordered me to inform you that the security forces you requested, he spat the words at Susan, have been assigned for a new purpose. They will meet us. Miss Ross will be disembarked privately. He turned to Susan, his face purple. You strictly to the crew cabin. Do not speak. Do not look at anyone. You are relieved of duty. Jessica, David, the same applies to you. Move now. But Captain ... Susan moaned as reality crashed down on her. I did not know. Did you not know? The captain roared, his voice echoing in the lounge. You should not have needed to know. You screamed at a passenger. You lied to your captain. You fabricated a federal security report. You put the navigation of this ship at risk. Now go. Humiliated, shaking, and crying. Susan Whitmore made her walk of shame down the corridor into the depths of the ship. Followed by her two shell-shocked disciples, the captain turned to Elena Ross. Whatever you want, anything. For the rest of the voyage, Elena just held up her book. I want to read, Captain, and I still really want that sparkling water. With a slice of lime, Captain Anderson ran to the kitchen himself. His hands were shaking so much that he dropped the can of sparkling water. He got a new one, poured it into a crystal glass with a trembling hand, and meticulously placed 3 slices of lime on a small porcelain plate. He carried it to Elena on a silver tray as if presenting a crown. Miss Ross, he said, his voice hoarse, I cannot apologize enough. In my 30 years of maritime life, I have never... You believed your crew, Elena said, not unkindly. Her anger had passed. Now she was just watching the pieces fall into place. You chose the word of your senior staff over a passenger's. You did not verify. You did not even look. Based on a lie, you were ready to have me arrested. I had no defense. Yes, I was negligent. I failed in my duty. And I am very sorry. You should be, Elena said, taking a sip of water. Thank you for this. She turned back to her window, which was a clear sign of you may leave. Hat in hand, the captain walked backward 2 steps, then turned and retreated to the bridge. He needed to call his union representative, but deep down he knew it was useless. He had failed the most important test of his command. The remaining hours of the voyage were like a funeral home. The exclusive lounge had turned into a tomb. Mr. Kensington had his head down. Pretending to sleep, the color drained from his face. The woman filming had silently deleted the video, her face a mask of pale horror. The atmosphere of privilege had been replaced by a suffocating fear. When the ship began to approach Southampton Port, the captain's voice came over the speaker, but it was stripped of that usual, cheerful, confident tone. It was the voice of a man reading his own obituary. Ladies and gentlemen, we are making our final approach to Southampton. We will be docking at a different pier than the one listed. Please remain in your seats. Please remain in your seats until all instructions are given. The docking was smooth, but no one noticed. As the ship entered the port, it passed the main terminal where other ships were. It passed the cargo areas, the maintenance hangars, and continued towards an isolated, remote pier, usually reserved for quarantine ships or ultra-luxury private yachts. When the engines went silent, the passengers in the exclusive lounge looked out the window. Waiting on the pier below, under the harsh port lights, were not the usual luggage carts and ground services. There was a black armored Escalade used for diplomatic transport. There were 2 official port police vehicles with their lights flashing but sirens off. And there was a sleek, dark blue Bentley flying a small, unobtrusive corporate flag. What is happening? Whispered the woman at table 3C. Mr. Kensington, looking pale, was desperately fumbling with his hand luggage to be the first person off the ship. Suddenly, the door to the exclusive lounge opened and Captain Anderson stepped out. All passengers will remain in their seats, he announced, his voice dead. This entire lounge will remain seated. The main entry door hissed open. The gangway had not been connected. Instead, a special staircase had been pulled up to the door. 3 men climbed the stairs and entered the ship. The first was a tall, silver-haired man wearing a handmade Italian suit that probably cost more than Elena's college tuition. His face was stern, his eyes were like chips of ice. This was Marcus Blackwood, the CEO of Majestic Horizon Lines. The second was a man in the razor-sharp, dark blue uniform of a high-ranking port police commander. The third was a company executive with an ashen face, carrying a briefcase. Marcus Blackwood walked onto the ship, his polished shoes making almost no sound. He ignored the captain. He ignored the passengers staring at him. He walked directly to cabana number 2, where Elena was standing with her bag on her shoulder. He leaned in and kissed her on the forehead. "Elena," he said. His voice, unlike the captain's, was not angry. It was something much more terrifying. Disappointed. "Are you okay, child?" "My father is on his way." "I am fine, Uncle Marcus," she said, hugging him. "I am just tired. I want to go home." "Course," he said, pointing to the exit. "Your car is waiting." She began to walk toward the door. As she passed Mr. Kensington in cabana number 1, she paused. She did not look at him. She just spoke to Marcus Blackwood. "Uncle Marcus, the gentleman in 1A, a Mr. Kensington. He was a vocal participant. He called me a threat. He suggested I be handcuffed." Marcus Blackwood did not even look at Kensington. He simply snapped his fingers at the executive with the briefcase. "Mr. Peterson," said Blackwood. "Take his name. He is on the Majestic permanent ban list. Effective immediately. Revoke his status. Void his miles. I want his and his company's corporate account flagged. Do what is necessary." "What?" Kensington groaned, jumping to his feet. "You cannot. I am platinum level. I was worried about security." The port police commander took a step toward him. "Sir, I suggest you sit down." Now, Kensington collapsed back into his seat with a face the color of spoiled milk. Elena descended the stairs, without looking back, and was whisked away in the escalade. Marcus Blackwood turned his icy gaze back to the crew. Captain Anderson stood at attention, his face rigid. "Captain," Blackwood said, his voice dangerously soft. "Mr. Blackwood, sir," the captain began. I can explain." "No, you cannot." Blackwood cut him off. "You are Captain Anderson, correct? You were in command of this ship." "Yes." "Sir, you accepted a report from a steward that a passenger under your care was a security threat, which is a term implying terrorism under international maritime laws, and you did nothing to verify it. You did not see the passenger with your own eyes. You did not ask your first officer to investigate. You simply agreed to have a paying customer, a young woman, detained by armed police. My crew. I trusted ... "You trusted wrongly," Blackwood hissed. "And by doing so, you exposed this company to a level of legal and financial liability that could bankrupt us. You failed in your command. You failed in your duty of care. You failed, Captain." He turned to the executive. "Peterson, take his badge. Take his credentials. He is suspended. Termination proceedings will begin. Escort him off the ship, sir," the captain pleaded. "Get off my ship," Blackwood said, the 30-year veteran captain, who commanded a 100,002 machine, visibly crumbled. He took off his badge and gave it to Peterson. His career was over. The police commander signaled, and the captain, accompanied by the executive, made his own walk of shame down the stairs. "Now," Blackwood said, his voice echoing in the silent ship, "where are the other 3? The walk from the crew cabin to the front of the ship was the longest walk of Susan Whitmore's life. Accompanied by David and Jessica, both openly weeping, Susan moved as if she were walking through wet cement. Her mind was a screaming chaos of denial. This could not be happening. It was a mistake, a misunderstanding. She did not know. How could she have known? She tried to form a defense. It was the girl's fault. She was dressed inappropriately. She had an attitude. She had questioned her. They stood before Marcus Blackwood. Susan had only seen him in corporate videos. He looked at all three of them, his expression one of pure disgust. He was not looking at them as employees. He was looking at them as if they were a disease. "Which one of you?" he asked, his voice a quiet rumble. "Is Susan Whitmore?" Susan's hand went up. A shaky, involuntary movement. I am, sir." Blackwood took a step toward her. He was a head taller than her, and he used that to look down on her completely. "Ms. Whitmore, 22 years in this company. 12 commendations, and I see." He glanced at the paper Peterson had given him. 14 passenger complaints for rudeness and discriminatory behavior, all of which it seems were covered up and dismissed by your direct manager. "Interesting, sir," Susan stammered. I am a good employee. I was protecting my lounge." She was aggressive. She ... What? Blackwood snapped. "She asked for a glass of water. She asked for the meal she pre-ordered. I saw the message, Ms. Whitmore. I also received a lovely audio file from Ms. Ross that she thoughtfully recorded. The only person shouting, the only person attacking anyone was you." Susan's stomach knotted. "The audio file. You screamed at a passenger." Blackwood continued, counting the crimes on his fingers. "You refused to provide service. You tried to incite other passengers against her. You lied. You made a false statement to the captain. You fabricated a federal security threat. And on top of it all, you topped it off by falsely accusing her of assault and trying to physically snatch her property." He paused, letting the weight of the words settle. "Do you realize what you have done?" It was a mistake," she moaned. "I did not know who she was." "And that," said Marcus Blackwood, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper, "is the most damning sentence you could say. That tells me this was not a mistake. It was a choice. You chose to harass a passenger because, judging by her appearance and race, you decided she was unimportant. You thought she was someone you could bully. You thought she had no power. It has never been the policy of this company," he thundered, his voice suddenly filling the lounge, "that a passenger's right to safety and dignity depends on who her father is. You are not being fired because you insulted Elena Ross. You are being fired because you are a liability, a bigot, and a disgrace to that uniform. You are everything I have spent my decade trying to purge from this company." He turned to the other two, cowering. "And you stood by, you watched it happen. You heard the lies and supported them with your silence. You were complicit. You are just as guilty as she is." "Please," Jessica cried. I have a family. I was scared of her." She pointed at Susan. "Then you are a coward," Blackwood said, unmoved. "And I do not employ cowards. Peterson, the badges. All of them. They are fired. Immediately, without severance, termination for cause. Union representatives are waiting in the terminal. I spoke with him. He agrees. Your behavior is indefensible and involves gross negligence. You are on your own." The port police commander stepped forward. "Susan Whitmore, Jessica Mills, David Evans, you are being removed from port property. You will never enter any Majestic terminal again. Your security clearance has been revoked. If you attempt to enter, you will be arrested for trespassing. Get your personal belongings from the staff lockers. Nothing else." As the three were marched off the ship and down the stairs, now sobbing hysterically, Marcus Blackwood addressed the remaining terrified passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Marcus Blackwood. I am the CEO of this company. You have just witnessed a catastrophic and systematic failure of my crew. For this, I offer you my eternal apologies. This voyage and all your connecting travel will be fully refunded. Each of you will receive 500,000 loyalty points loaded into your account for your trouble. We will disembark here. There are vans waiting to take you to your connecting flights or baggage claim. We will handle everything. We at Majestic," he finished, his voice heavy, "believe we must do better. Visibly shaken, he turned and left the ship. A fresh, polite, and looking very, very scared new crew just brought onto the ship, took over the stunned passengers. The cleanup was complete. The reign of terror on the voyage had ended. But for Susan Whitmore, karma was just beginning. Susan Whitmore did not just lose her job. She was thrown out of the only world she knew. For 22 years, her identity was senior head steward. It was a title that gave her status, a modicum of power, and a sense of superiority. She lived in a modest apartment in Santa Monica, but at sea, she was the queen of her small pressurized kingdom. Now she was just Susan, a middle-aged, unemployed woman in a cheap polyester suit, standing on the Southampton dock with her employee ID cut by a bored-looking security guard, as Marcus Blackwood had promised. The union wanted nothing to do with her. Susan, her representative, had said on the phone, his voice weary, "You lied to the captain. You fabricated a security threat. You were recorded screaming at a passenger, and you did all this to the cruise line owner's daughter. What exactly do you expect us to do? Be grateful you are not in federal prison." She made her return to Los Angeles on another airline. On an economy class flight she paid for herself. The humiliation was so deep it made her physically ill. Of course, the story did not stay secret. The woman at 3C, despite deleting the video, had already sent it to a friend. A travel blogger in the private suite had pieced the story together from the grapevine and the docking at the remote pier. By the time Susan landed in Los Angeles, the headlines were already on prominent aviation and travel blogs. Majestic crew fired on pier after grumpy passenger turns out to be boss's daughter. Her name was everywhere. Her photo taken from her social media was pasted into articles. The comments section was a digital hell. She was called Cruise Karen, Bigot, Susan, and worse. She locked herself in her apartment, but the world found her. Her phone number was leaked. Her email overflowed. The apartment management started receiving complaints. Jessica and David faced a similar, albeit quieter, blacklisting. They were young enough to try to find other jobs. But the termination for cause note linked to a high-profile security and discrimination incident made them toxic. Dreaming of working on international routes, Jessica found herself selling sunglasses at a local mall. David moved back to Ohio and started working at his family's hardware store. His travel dreams reduced to stocking shelves. Captain Anderson, with 30 years of seniority, faced the heaviest professional consequences. The Maritime Authority opened an investigation not for discrimination, but for the failure to verify a security threat, which is a major violation of bridge protocol. His captain's license was suspended. He spent his retirement savings hiring lawyers, but the case was open and shut. He would never command a major U.S. ship again. He eventually found work on old cargo ships on dangerous routes in Alaska. A lonely and dangerous end to a once-proud career. However, for Susan, karma was just warming up. Losing her job and reputation was not enough. The universe was not finished peeling back the layers of her rotten life. Susan had always walked with an air of invincibility. Colleagues like Jessica were afraid of her. This was not just because of her seniority, because Susan had a secret. She had a long-standing affair with a mid-level manager named Jonathan Price, a vice president of in-service services at Majestic Cruises. It was Jonathan who made Susan untouchable. He was the one who buried the previous 14 passenger complaints. He was the one who always gave her the best routes. The moment the scandal broke, Jonathan Price realized he was exposed. During his ruthless purge of the company, Marcus Blackwood had ordered a full review of Susan's file. When he saw the 14 rejected complaints, he understood exactly what had happened. He did not just fire Susan, he followed the rot to its source. Jonathan Price was summoned to Blackwood's office. He was fired on the spot, not just for severe personnel management failure, but for violating corporate ethics and knowingly putting the company at risk. When? Jonathan's wealthy wife from Pasadena learned the reason for her husband's dismissal. That his long-term mistress had caused a scandal that was now driving down company shares. She was not sad. She was precise. She filed for divorce, invoking the infidelity clause in the prenuptial agreement. Stripped of his job, stock options, and his wife's money, Jonathan was left with nothing. Hysterical, Susan had called Jonathan the moment she was fired. "You have to fix this, Jonathan. You have to call Marcus. You have to say it was a misunderstanding." Jonathan, whose own life had blown up, had simply said, "Never call this number again," and hung up. This was the real hard karma. Susan's arrogance did not just come from herself. It was borrowed secondhand from a man who used her just as much as she used him. Her protection was an illusion. When the storm came, her shield was not just lowered. It was shattered, and the man holding it had fled for cover, but was crushed himself. Penniless, blacklisted, and now truly all alone, Susan could not pay her mortgage. Her house was foreclosed on. She had to sell her car. Like David, she had to move back to a small, dusty town in Arizona to live in her elderly mother's spare room. Her fall was absolute 0.8 months later. Teterboro Airport in New Jersey, the hub of private jets, was buzzing with the quiet, expensive energy of the ultra-rich. This was where real power landed. The sleekest Gulfstream and Bombardier jets were lined up on the tarmac like exotic birds. Among the ground crews cleaning and refueling these jets was a new employee, part of a third-party cleaning service. She wore a baggy, ill-fitting blue work smock. Her blonde hair was matted and tucked under a baseball cap, and a permanent bitter resignation was etched onto her face. This was Susan Whitmore. This was the only job she could get. Her name was so toxic in the aviation and maritime world that no customer-facing role would accept her. But the cleaning contractor, struggling to find workers for the night shift, had not done the same background checks. So now, instead of serving champagne in the skies or on the seas, she was cleaning toilets and emptying trash cans on the ground. She was invisible again, but this time for real, as she carried a trash bag from a hangar. A brand new jet, a Gulfstream G700, stopped just yards away from her. The plane was a vision with its sleek, pearlescent black paint featuring a single, elegant silver R on its tail. The R of Ross Logistics. The stairs came down. Susan froze, the trash bag slipping from her hand. The first person to emerge was Marcus Blackwood, holding a folder and laughing. The second was Amara's father, Thomas Ross, a powerful man radiating easy, unshakable authority. And the third was Elena Ross. She was not the girl on the ship. She was wearing a chic, bright blue business suit. Her hair was flawlessly done, and she was holding a leather portfolio. She was not in her father's shadow. She was walking beside him as an equal. As they walked toward the waiting Bentley, she was pointing out a design feature of the plane to Blackwood, her voice sounding confident and clear. She had not just retreated to the safety of the private jet as her father had wished. Instead, she had turned the incident on the Royal Sovereign into a mission. In the passing months, Elena Ross had been appointed by her father's board to lead the Vance Global Majestic Independent Audit Committee. She was now effectively Marcus Blackwood's boss. She was ruthless. She was not just fixing diversity training. She was tearing down entire in-service services and HR departments to their foundations and rebuilding them. She was implementing new data-driven systems to track passenger complaints. She was firing managers who had a habit of losing reports, like Jonathan Price. In her quiet, methodical way, she was rebuilding the company from scratch, ensuring that what happened to her would never happen to anyone else again. Blackwood and her father passed in front of the service area. Susan was not even 20 steps away, frozen in her dirty smock, holding a trash bag. Deep in a conversation about fleet acquisition, Elena did not even see her. Her gaze passed over where Susan stood, seeing nothing but the tarmac, the car, and the next meeting. Susan was not a person to her. She was not an enemy. She was not even a memory. She was just nothing. Susan watched Elena Ross, the woman whose life she had tried to ruin over a glass of water, get into the Bentley. As the car drove away, she watched it take her to a world of power and influence. Susan could only dream of serving. The wind blew a piece of trash across the tarmac. With her eyes burning with a new, deep, and completely permanent humiliation, Susan bent down to pick it up. Once she ruled the oceans. Now it was left to her to clean the ground Elena Ross walked on.